work and working with an incredible team, serving the public in absolutely incredible landscapes in here in the Lower Mainland is a real gift and something I really love. So that's what has always drawn me to the work, and certainly a big park user myself. Yeah, it brings me a lot of joy.
Can you tell us why regional parks are important?
Of course, they provide incredible benefits to regional residents that really support the livability of the region. And if you look at them, they're actually, they can be drivers of ecological and human health and really equity and resilience. So, they benefit all regional residents through the provision of important ecosystem services. So things like clean air, water, habitat protection, pollination, climate resilience, and ecosystem connectivity. But, there's also a lot of growing research and recognition of the really significant human health benefits from spending time in nature. So things like improved mental health, improved physical health, reduced obesity and cardiovascular disease, improved pregnancy outcomes, improved cognitive function, better social cohesion, reduce mortality risk, reduce medical costs. So the list is so long, and there is this increased research that is making these links between the health of our parks and the health of our people and the resilience of our communities and the connection to accessing nature. So we know that regional parks benefit all regional residents, but they certainly benefit those who have access to them and live close to them, even in an even greater way. So your Bowen Island listeners would certainly be familiar with Crippen Regional Park. It's well loved on the island and an absolutely beautiful regional park. And we think, estimate about probably 55% of all visits to the park are by local Bowen residents. So, over time, enjoying that kind of access can have really profound and positive impacts on people's lives.
So I'm curious how Metro picks a regional park and what's changed over the years.
Again, the purpose of the regional park system is to protect important ecosystems and connect people to nature. So the system is currently about 13,800 hectares of parks, greenways, reserves, and conservancy areas. And that's about 5% of the region's land base. It stretches all the way from Bowen Island in the west to Maple Ridge and Langley in the east. So it's fair to say that the regional park system protects some of the most sensitive and incredible landscapes we've got in the Lower Mainland. And it's generally, really well loved and appreciated by residents across the system because of the value it brings to people's lives. So, when the park system is expanded, it's done through the lens of our mission. Protecting natural areas and connecting people to nature. But really, when park expansion moves forward, it's about maintaining the livability of the region for current and future generations. And considering, all the pressure natural land is under across the region, it's also about protecting the remaining protected areas before they're all gone. So we do have a strategic plan that guides land acquisition across the region. It's called the 2050 Regional Park Land Acquisition Strategy. And that plan, and more broadly, park acquisition is done in really close collaboration with our municipal partners and the province and First Nations and others to ensure that the regional park system is growing in alignment with the vision and aspirations of, host municipalities and in line with local community plans and the regional growth strategy and other plans. And I think, Don, you also asked, how has this changed over time?
Yeah.
The regional park system began back in 1966. And over the past 50 years or so, Metro Vancouver, the system has grown from about 3,800 hectares to over 13,800 hectares, now with 23 regional parks, 5 greenways, 2 conservancy areas, and 2 regional park reserves. So some of the drivers for the original park system and expanding that system then 50 years ago are the same that they are now. So, population growth, access to nature, escalating land costs, development putting pressure on natural systems, and the need for, affordable access to nature close to home. Those are things that still, inform our work now. But there are new challenges now here in 2022 that weren't at play 50 years ago. So an obvious one, of course, is climate change. and related to that disappearing sensitive ecosystem. So it's fair to say that we're feeling the impacts of climate change, and we know that large, healthy, biodiverse ecosystems are more resilient and better adapted at storing carbon. We also know that land that could be added to the regional park system is disappearing quickly across the region. So, between 2009 and 2014, over 1,600 hectares of sensitive ecosystems across the region were lost. And that's the equivalent of losing about 4 Stanley Parks every 5 years. So the opportunity is shrinking as we go forward. Another really important driver for us and the region, Metro Vancouver, is reconciliation with First Nations. So, of course, First Nation people have lived in the Lower Mainland since time immemorial, and we're working collaboratively with First Nations across the region. And reconciliation and collaboration and working together a good way with First Nations is a major priority for us as we, look to expand the regional park system and manage it going forward. A couple other things that have changed are, I think, our understanding of equity. So, that there can be social factors that create barriers to people accessing nature, and the need to, remove those barriers is important to create more equitable access to nature. And I think, maybe one last thing that has changed is just the understanding of the really incredible social and physical health benefits regional parks provide.
So that brings us to, how do you find a regional park, and why Cape Roger Curtis?
Well, we have all these factors that are informing land acquisition and the expansion of the park system that I mentioned earlier. But it really comes down to those core goals of protecting important natural areas and connecting people to nature, and providing benefits to people by doing that work. So high ecologically valuable sites, and sites that have the opportunity for people to connect with and experience nature.
So I want to speak to Cape Roger Curtis, and I'm curious, when you pick a park, are the issues always the same?
At the outset of any park project, regardless of where it is, whether it's an expansion or the development of new amenities, there are similarities in the big questions being asked for sure. Access and traffic and park management approaches and balancing conservation and access. These are certainly themes. But of course, every park, every landscape, and every host municipality is different. And there are unique considerations, unique geographies, unique environmental values, and you're in different territories of different nations. And so overwhelmingly, when we take on a major project or the park's expanded, the response is generally positive. So, people are supportive of the regional park system. They see the benefit and they want access. They want to shape it. They want to inform it. Of course, Cape Roger Curtis is a proposed park. There's, of course, located on Bowen Island. So there are unique geographical questions for sure. So things like access and ferry traffic and infrastructure are all questions that are top of mind. But, the truth is, we're just at the start of this process. So we have a lot of planning ahead on this new initiative where people can help shape the future of this potential park. And an important first step in that process is understanding what are the questions and what are the issues that people have. And then as we move through the process, responding to those questions through really good technical studies and research and consultation and collaboration. So step one is to understand exactly what are the questions and what are the issues.
So most islanders are asking, how will service for a new camping park be provided without further compromising Bowen's water supply, narrow country roads, overloaded sewage management, limited fire and emergency services, and a ferry that's running at full capacity?
Well, yes. And I mean, these are all important questions and exactly what we'll be getting into through the planning process. And I think, it's, as I said, it's at a very early stage, and it's important to look at the site and what's considered and what's being proposed. So, the existing site was previously planned for development of 24 large estate homes. And these sites they're cleared for development. So there's an existing road network in place. There are drilled wells and land that's suitable for septic field installation. So in regards to some of the questions about infrastructure, we really need to look into these things, and we need to understand exactly what the questions are. But in many ways, the infrastructures that's in place on the landscape is maybe above and beyond of what is needed for the park. And in some ways, some of that would need to be rewilded as we go forward.
So because we're at the beginning, can you speak to how this public process works? Does Metro drive it, or does the municipality drive it?
The key to a good planning process is, or good park planning is good process, good research, and good data. So in the case of the proposed park at Cape Roger Curtis and other large projects, we typically take, a 3-step process, and generally. So step 1 is listen and learn, as I've said, and it's an exercise in understanding what are the big issues, what are the questions, what are the concerns. So it's a listening and learning exercise. We then come back with a draft response to those responses to questions, a high-level proposal, test that further and refine it, and ultimately come back with a final proposal. Now, within that process, there are many opportunities to engage. So stakeholder workshops, community meetings, online engagement events, and of course, for Cape Roger Curtis, we'll be working very closely as well with the Squamish Nation to engage them and understand how they wish to be a part of the project, and we certainly hope to be working closely with them over the long term. So we do need to move through the municipal rezoning process. The park, or the proposed park, is currently proposed for rural or residential, and that would be a process to change it to a park designation. And that's a Bowen Island municipal process that we would move through. And then, of course, there's the process of reporting back to the Metro Vancouver Board on what's proposed as well.
So it begs the question, is the sale of the Cape Roger Curtis lands contingent on a successful rezoning?
So no, the rezoning process is an important aspect of the project, but the timeline for that is not directly tied to the potential sale of the parkland. So as I said, the property is currently zoned rural residential, and a rezoning and OCP amendment application would be submitted for regional park use. And that process is a municipal process. And it does include a range of referrals to the local committees, Island Trust, public engagement, presentation to councils. So that would be the rezoning process.
Let's go back to infrastructure. I mean, one of the biggest concerns for people on Bowen is the ferry service is already at overcapacity, and I'm curious what you've thought about that.
That's something certainly we've heard just in our early conversations with folks. And as I said, as we work through the planning process, that would be a priority issue for us to explore and address. And what we'll be doing is undertaking a traffic and access study. So that will look at road and ferry traffic associated with the park and understanding what will the impacts be, what kind of trips would be generated, when would they be generated, what's the frequency, how would that change over time, and in turn, working with Bowen Island municipality and through the planning process, we have the ability to look at solutions to those, and there are a number of solutions, or what's being considered for the park is really focused on to alternative access to the park other than cars. But there are many solutions, improved greenway access to the park, a shuttle bus, a reservation system for the park that, directs people to off-peak ferry times, working closely with TransLink to expand, bus service to the park. There are many responses that we can explore once we understand the nature of the challenges at hand. So that's a priority, and that's something that we'll be undertaking through the planning process.
Yeah, it sounds like it's too early to address many of these questions.
It certainly is not too early to understand the questions and start to ask the questions and get the data required to respond accordingly. We're at the beginning of the process where we're understanding the big questions. We're starting to explore what the park could look like on the land. And through that process, we'll respond to all these questions. But certainly there's a plan in place to do it. And we know there are options. And, at some of our other parks throughout the region, we're already starting to explore, shuttle bus service in the summer. What would that look like? And trying to, understand how to best accommodate people in a park that is low impact to the environment and of course neighbors as well. And in large part, we've seen good success with that. I think it's also important to note that, in the preliminary ideas for camping or for tent camping on site, it's not what's being considered is not an RV park kind of experience. So